And so, yeah, so then when people come in, it should pop up on the screen so they'll be able to see their audience.
Yeah.
And you're not having to share your screen or anything like that, so should be it. Perfect. I got it sorted.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. It just,
So, and this one doesn't have any, they don't have any slides. Or anything, so.
No slides for the entire
Not,
thing?
not for their family, yeah, they're all gonna be in person, so it'll just be the audience. that is for-
No, they're good.
it was a whole two-screen thing that was really confusing. I had no idea what to do.
That's okay. We'll get there. And then the next, after that one, you're in here, right?
Yeah.
So I'll send the expressions as well.
Well, it's back to the way I know now, so it's
The
fine.
one screen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, I just wanna make sure everything's good.
Good.
That changes, you just text us, you know, how to get hold of us. We're just 2 doors down, so not very far.
I told her I felt like a problem child, but sorry.
What?
I told her I felt like a problem child, but I'm sorry.
Problem children are all fun.
Nah, you're good. We'll figure it out. And it also doesn't help that like we gave you guys instructions, we trained you, and a bunch of things changed, which was not the plan,
And they're still in play.
and are still changing. And changed on Wednesday when we got here, knowing we got to play with tech. So I mean,
Yeah.
we're throwing a lot into this, and we're still trying to figure things out.
He's just a huge computer whiz. He was flying in through the stuff.
I hope. Really bring it up. Like, oh, yeah, I can fix it, it takes a few minutes. He's like, there you go. Perfect, I find it. We literally called her, please just come stay here for a while, like say at PM after yesterday, we were like, can you just sit in the ballroom? And he was like, yeah, he just sat in the ballroom for the whole keynote, just in case. Nothing went wrong, but he was there. So he's our dude. Alright, then you can just say, you got this. Oh, yeah.
I have plenty.
I love your shoe. I love when the purple and orange just like explodes in this town. Everybody has the orange. There's one more here shirt on Facebook. I've never seen any. I don't know. It's cool. Yeah, I didn't even realize. It's like, oh my goodness.
I have the stress. It's got tiger silhouettes on it, and half of it, one half is orange. And I wore that to the trial and growl. It was a gift thing, and people stared.
School has like University of Michigan colors, so they're blue and gold.
Yeah.
So you can pretty much find anything in our colors. But
So you're a Wolverine?
I'm not, no, my school just has those colors.
Oh.
Here's the Pride, so our mascot is a lion. It's actually they changed it. Right before I came, they used to be the Crusaders. And then they changed it to Pride.
It's a huge change.
Very, very, I've seen people with like Clark Crusaders, and I'm like, that's cool, I think that's like a cool name, you know? But now with the Pride, which is weird.
My son is a coach, and he has been at the Cobras, the Fire Ants, and now the Valkyries.
Ooh, Valkyries, I love that.
And they were an all-women's school until 2 years ago, and now they have men too, but they're still the Valkyries.
Oh, that's so awesome. I was like, that sounds like an all women.
It was until 2 years ago.
Okay.
And he started the men's tennis team, the roundup. That's why he was brought in, because he's known for starting up programs. So he has both the men and the women. I'm not proud or anything. He's taken them to playoffs both years and existed.
That was like my original school, tiger. Then I've been a bear. And then a falcon. I went to Marshall, there's a thundering. Sorry. A thunder So.
Oh, they go to what?
I know, drive a Buffalo or Dyson, this big. Moved animal with over. And I've been. Cardinal. And now I'm.
I was a fighting koala.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Fighting koala.
Fighting. You're so cuddly and cute. It's weird. So you have like a bamboo shoot.
Another koala. Fight. Oh. Whether it's communication and information. My recommendation. So what?
No, this is, I learned about it like. Oh, I didn't think it was. Yeah, I feel very fortunate to work with my Terry's faculty, first layer and magnificent layer. You know, like. Right. When are you done? Are you just waiting?
I'm just.
So do you do two coursework here? So
Yes. And then,
oh. Yeah. Exactly. Well, their program no longer exists. Really. That was ours, 2 years coursework, year costs.
if you needed, you can go.
Plenary room 1, 2.
Yeah.
1, 2.
I
Seminary
ended up
1,
in
2.
the wrong room yesterday.
And I don't read well.
Exactly.
I don't know you. I'm gonna sit next to you.
Okay. We've been on Zoom together, but. never
Well,
in
that
person.
doesn't count.
Right, I know.
It's like, he said, there's bodies out there.
We do.
I know. It's like, not just a head floating around.
I was on this panel the last night actually.
No, it's-
Oh, yeah. On,
Maybe
the
I was.
online
Who
one.
knows? It's such a dim memory.
I made copies of our actual proposal.
Oh,
thanks.
somebody's organized.
They listed as as chair for some reason. David's organized.
I have 2 sets. These are,
Okay,
the
same
review and
thing.
development process.
Even printed in a color.
Jeez. Oh, this is the one that we had for
These are
I.3.
still fresh.
20. Yes.
Oh, this is 2021.
Yeah, remember no, but he updated, because I was getting notifications today that he was in there editing
Updated.
things.
So this
and
is
I'm
our
going-
ones for now, but it says 2021. Got it. Okay.
They're
Wait,
all
who did that?
essentially the
Give me,
same
uh,
as what.
Did you do this so smart? I'm just so clueless.
I just pulled them off the desk.
Thank
No,
you.
and we did these ones and then Mike
Oh.
printed up.
Yeah.
Those.
No, I meant you brought them in.
I brought them in, yeah. Well, because he told me he had handouts and I felt inadequate, so I just grabbed things up.
We're just here.
I'm like, this is, I forgot at a conference. I don't know how to do it. My executive functions got out the window the last couple of months. So the
I'm
fact that
out
I'm
of-
here.
Nobody, I haven't had to do anything anybody tells me or not, I haven't had anybody tell me what to do in so long, like be there, do this, do that, at this time, unless it's on my calendar and I put it there. So it's like really unusual experiencing this again. Hmm. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay. It's It's been a really amazing week. Learned a lot
I
to
know.
take back.
There's just so much energy here. That's so good to have
Yeah.
face to face again.
It is wonderful.
Never
isn't it?
again.
I just
a
wanna talk
hybrid.
to
We
people.
like
I don't wanna
never
listen.
again have a hybrid. I'm so annoyed by.
These are our Hoover questions.
Oh, great, thank you.
I'm glad I chose the sessions I chose because I'm tasked with creating a first year writing sequence this next academic year, and I needed to know what to put in that proposal. I needed to know how do I frame this? Because I have curriculum. I mean, I can do that, but how do I frame what the administrative duties look like? How do I shape myself as
There's
a
gotta be
WPA?
examples of it, right?
Surely.
Yeah.
And I've just learned so much.
Although I also know we lost a lot of information. Yeah, I know. It's something like being here.
It's wild.
Oh, it's 3:00.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, let's get going.
Well, thank goodness. Okay, I did something. I looked at my phone.
Oh, and we do have folks online. Welcome to folks at home.
Hi, everybody.
Oh,
I know.
I was just kidding.
Yeah, well, I thought you were serious. We can wait another minute or two. I don't know, with the delay, everything's kind of got pushed off a little bit, right?
Yeah, and
You okay if we wait maybe 2 minutes?
it said
This
that
is
20
very
20
informative.
people were coming
Right.
on Hoover at
Hmm.
3:30.
Right.
Now, our series advertises itself as a focus on inclusivity. I was just looking at it. Oh, gosh.
Grab a seat. I think there's a few open. We're just holding off for a second until people come in, find us.
Does it look like there's people out there?
Yeah.
No offense, I guess it's okay.
Thank you, David, again for printing these off.
Sure. Well, it was easy for me. I didn't have to run to Kinko's or something like that.
You're in the right place. We're just low numbers, but that's all right. I think folks are hit the conference fatigue wall. I know, I'm kind of like, let's just go for a walk. But,
I'm gonna hit the pool this
you
evening,
know, mine doesn't have a
for
pool.
sure. Well,
There's a pool.
yeah, I'm staying at Lakeside Lodge. There's a very nice pool area there, but I have been sort of inviting people over and I'm just letting people in.
Pool party. Excellent. Would we like to get started? Because it's through. And in respect of folks who will be in here afterwards. They listed me as chair, though I in no way prepared as chair. David did all of our organizing here. But I'm Heather Faulkner. I am editor for Perspectives on Writing through the West Clearinghouse. And I'm going to let my colleagues here introduce themselves individually in a moment. But just to give you a preface, this is planned as a roundtable, and we want to have an open conversation as opposed to us talking at you. We did have some questions in Hoover, so we printed those out and we'll address those, but you should feel very comfortable just asking a question and getting as nitty gritty as you would like, especially given that we have low numbers. So again, Heather Faulkner, Perspectives on Writing at the WAC Clearinghouse.
And I'm Amy Taylor McClure. I am a co-series editor of the Practices and Possibilities series through the WAC Clearinghouse as well.
And I'm Joan Mullen. I'm a co-editor for the WAC Clearinghouse's International Exchanges on the Study of Writing book series.
And I'm David Blakesley. I'm the publisher for Parlor Press. And also I edit the Kenneth Burke Journal and the writing instructor. And I'm also a professor at Clemson. So welcome to Clemson, all of you. Fran here is taking care of all our technology. She's one of our outstanding PhD students in the rhetorics, communication and information design. So thank you, Fran.
All right. So I'll give a little bit of a preface here. The way that we pitch this and the way we want to focus our conversation today really is about making the processes of publication in our different book series, because that's what our focus, our genres are, more transparent, but also to give you some insight into how we do that with an equitable lens. And it isn't so much a add-on, it's really infused throughout all of these different processes. So the questions that we are drawing from come from one of actually the last IWAC similar panel questions that had come up. And so we'll start with those, but then we can expand and go from there. I'm actually going to take them out of order a little bit so that there's some a little bit different cohesiveness here, but maybe I can pass this down to David to start and share some ideas about number 7. I have an idea for a book. When should I talk to an editor?
Okay. There we go. I always advise people to talk to an editor of a series or journal editor earlier rather than later. It's good, of course, to have an idea in mind and not just present a whole bunch of different possibilities and so on, but talk to them early in the process just to see what their thoughts are. They're not going to say, well, we'll accept that, or they're probably going to say, well, sure, develop it and send us a prospectus, that sort of thing. A lot of times people wait very late in the process of a development of a book. They think they have to have 4 or 5 chapters done, and then they say, oh, I'll work up a prospectus and then send the prospectus in at that point. Send the prospectus in early. Maybe you only have an introduction done or 1 chapter, or maybe not even a full chapter done. But the prospectus will kind of outline it for the editors, and they'll give you feedback and say, well, this looks great. Now send us a chapter. And you can say, okay, well, I'll have one to you in a couple of months. And then you kind of have gotten the green light, and you haven't waited for so long into the process that you can't get started getting an editor involved in the process. And editors do this because they like this process. They want to be involved in helping you develop the book, and that's very important to them. It's why we do it. So bring them in early.
And I'd also say that sometimes you don't even think of a simple first step of going to our various websites and taking a look at the kinds of books that we publish to see whether your idea or your research interest fits into that frame. Taking a look at the actual books that are published and seeing just from their chapters, from their abstracts, what they might be focusing on, and again, see if you fit into the series. I know the WAC Clearinghouse, we tend to have guidelines for our series, and they're very clear about, I hope they're clear, and if not, like David said, contact the editors, which is what we suggest. They give you guidelines about what our expectations are, and in our case, what our language policy is, because the focus here really is in an international series on inclusivity and equity. And so we want to work with scholars that are crossing borders, that are from different research traditions, different languages. And that means that you should contact us early. We have go look at the submission, go to the submission portal and look at the information we're asking for, because I think that's going to help you actually think about what your idea is and focus a little bit more on your idea when you look at the kinds of questions in our submission portal. Just because you go in the portal doesn't mean you have to press submit. So back out. I think that's a good idea to do that. And those people who are interested in like conferences and CFPs, we actually help you create a CFP. That goes back to what David said about getting in touch with the editor, because we can help you even in our series write those CFPs, again, thinking in terms of crossing borders and crossing languages and crossing traditions of expression when it comes to a book publication.
Should I continue? Or do you want to go into another question?
If you have anything additional to add.
Well, sure. I love working with authors and editors. It's
Mhm.
truly a joy. Since I've been with the WAC Clearinghouse since 2019, just some of the best conversations have come out of sessions like this, where we're talking about, you know, WAC Clearinghouse's open access, and we value that. And with practices and possibilities specifically, we're trying to sort of push the idea of what scholarship in this field looks like. So if that's your jam, reach out. I have talked to people who haven't submitted anything to us. They just were like, just trying to get an idea. And I feel like my role as an editor is to help authors and editors sort of understand what the rhetorical situation is. Who is the audience of our publication? So if you're even just at that stage, I'm happy to talk to people at even the very early stages of their work. And I'm thoroughly passionate about working with authors and editors. So reach out soon.
Definitely. The only little bit I'll add on to that is I emphasize reach out soon, especially if you're early career and this is your first book. One of the things that I love about working with Perspectives is the ability to help those new scholars figure out what their message is, how to sculpt it, how to present it in a way that's authentic to them. We're not expecting you to come with the full manuscript ready, done, get it into production. In fact, that just doesn't happen. So why don't we turn it to the audience instead of reading off a list for now, and then we can come back here if need be. Anybody have questions? Yeah, please, Lori Ellen. I'll come over. I can get.
I have a comment. I think sometimes people take the comments and they just want to hear themselves say something, but no, this is something, here, it's because, like any person who just came out of a dissertation, I'm like, well, does it have an afterlife? That's the big question, right? And so I thought of these big important people in their editorial offices, way up there, high aloft, and it's so reassuring to hear that you actually like to talk to people with ideas and workshop that with them. So yay.
I remember going to some meeting at McGraw Hill in New York, and it was on like the 45th floor of some monstrous skyscraper. And as you went up in the elevator, it started swaying near the top. That's where the editorial offices were, but we're not like that.
No, you can hear our enthusiasm.
I've worked in those offices. They're not fun to work in either, by any stretch. But I think something that you touched on, it relates to a question that came up earlier, is about that idea of like, how do you even know, is this a book? Is it a bunch of articles? Is it 2 articles? What do we do with this thing? And at Perspectives, we encounter that a lot with new authors. And one of the things that we like to really emphasize with them is to step back and say, or this is what my advice is your dissertation was the thing you wrote to earn your PhD. It has a very specific audience that is not the broader academic community. And if you want to, and you think that the ideas that you have there are strong enough to carry a book, why don't we put that text to the side and start to map that out from scratch, right? Like, what would it look like if you were to rewrite this from the perspective of all the knowledge you have, but without looking at the text that you've already developed. And part of that is about that idea of sacrificing your darlings and not being too attached to what's already written on the page, because you can always bring that back in. But talking with editors is a great way to do that as well. If others have- What other questions?
Yeah.
Hi there. I have this is actually one of my first question. So I have a couple. My first is just off of the sheet here. I'm curious to hear more of this question. Will the book be all sour grapes or sour grapes plus? What does that refer to?
That refers to a review of a Williams book by Kenneth Burke. It was a collection of essays. It might have been in the American Brain. Burke was praising Williams because it wasn't just sour grapes. It wasn't just pure polemic, but it was sour grapes plus. There was an additional, value to it.
There was an upshot.
Yeah, and so, a book can tear a lot of things down, and that's fine, but there needs to be something else there that it does. That goes beyond that, because that's fairly easy to do. We do that in our articles a lot, especially in some particular areas of discipline. But a book should build towards something.
Okay.
That's what that.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the phrase sour grapes plus.
Gotcha. Oh, my second question is just I think a lot of newer and maybe even some established authors are very nervous about this idea. I know I am this idea of simultaneous submission and whether something is under review and kind of the politics of that and all of that. And I guess I'm just wondering, really what I want to ask is, how much of a faux pas is it to submit simultaneously if a press has on their website, we appreciate it if you do not submit simultaneously, that kind of thing. What are the and let me just say I am not implying that I've done this. Okay, I'm asking this question for the benefit of everyone online and here in the room. Thank you.
Because the face I made. Yeah, well, I did have the strongest response and I am willing to hear different perspectives on this. I really am. So I'm glad you focused on that. And I'm going to touch on getting there on a couple other questions here. And one is when we think about reviewers, we are asking faculty in our field to take the time to mentor, read carefully, and provide really good feedback to a proposal and to think deeply about a series of questions that we're asking them, which includes how is this situated in the field, or what, how does this compare to other things that you've read out there? And I have to say, I'm always so impressed by the careful responses that people compose when they're giving feedback to a proposal, because they've taken that time for you to say, oh, by the way, I found somebody else to do this. It seems like, well, I don't even know what word I want to supply, but I want to say on a Zoom, but it just seems thoughtless. How's that? Thoughtless? It seems thoughtless. And I think as academics who care about, our field and the people involved in it, that's just one of the cautions. I don't know, and I'm not sure what the practices are, and you two might know this better, because I think in commercial press, it doesn't matter, like,
It can matter.
can it matter? Like for a fiction book or something?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
because you work with it. If your agent can shop it around, sorry, like,
Well, that's.
that's a little bit different, but they're not, once a press says, yes, I'm interested in reading the full thing, then that's it.
But that's like us.
That's us. You can send a proposal to 12 people if you want. Provided that the press does not send the proposal out for peer review, that's something to check, because we often will send proposals out for peer review, not always, but and if I do that, then I will be very fussy if I find out that somebody else is also reviewing.
And that's a difference, because we do try to send proposals out for peer review. right away so that it's not just our, we're really changing and shifting in a lot of ways, unless there's something really, really wrong with the proposal that I don't understand.
I think if you're under contract, obviously, pay attention to your contract. Let us know. Just let us know. This has been sent out to multiple places. I think that is, I think your first approach. Just let us know. So we can take that into consideration. But yeah, be mindful of time and respectful of time, and labor.
And money. Parlor Press has a policy, we don't consider simultaneous submissions, particularly for the reasons that Joan mentioned, that reviewing is hard. It costs money and it takes time, and the labor of reviewers is valuable. And we've had instances where, we've spent $500 or $1,000 getting reviews and accepted the book or recommended accepting the book from the reviewers, and then we find out that it's already been taken by somebody else. And that's really disappointing, and the series editors were just furious. But what I would recommend, and the reason why people might submit simultaneously is because they're in a hurry. Maybe they have a tenure and promotion case coming up. Just tell the editor that, can I submit it elsewhere just at the prospectus stage? And here's the reason why I'd want to do that. And, they may say, sure, it's just a prospectus now. But I would ask them, I wouldn't try to hide it. Because editors talk to each other too across presses, so they would find out probably.
If somebody said that to you though, if somebody sent you perspectives and they said, and I'm sending this out, what would you do with that? Would the decision lie with you? Would you wait to hear back from them before sending it out to reviewers, since you pay reviewers?
Well, if somebody, and this just happened recently, I would send it to the series editors and say, this person is wanting to send it out to multiple presses. Do you guys like this? And if they really like it, we're going to act quickly and say, we want it. Or, we're maybe, we might offer you advanced contract now because we like it so much and we know your work. And so that'll get us moving. But we haven't invested much time or much money at that point, and so that's fine. But if we go ahead with the advanced contract, then that's the end of simultaneous submissions. Yeah.
Maybe just add one last little bit to that is sometimes we'll do an expedited review in that instance. So we might say, we have enough disciplinary expertise on this particular topic within the editorial, like the series editors, and we'll say, all right, everybody's reading for the next 2 weeks, and we're going to make a decision on whether or not we want to do an advanced contract and move forward. Or if we don't have that expertise, we will try to find reviewers who will agree to do a very quick turnaround. And we are always, when we think about equity, we're always thinking about that as like speed, but quality as well, so that we're not wasting people's time. Yeah. Other questions? Mike. The one and only.
I'll just follow up with that real quickly because our submissions portal on the WAC Clearinghouse, if you're using it, not every series uses it yet, and not every journal uses it yet, but we're hoping. It requires you to indicate, I have not submitted this to another press. And the reason for that came out of some work I was doing with University Press of Colorado, which Utah State University Press is an imprint of that press. And I was the chair of the board of trustees. I'm still on it for another few months, but it's been 8 years I've been on it. The Rachel LeVay, who is in charge of Utah State University Press, calls me up and we're talking about this new submission she's gotten. And I realize it's the same submission that I've been looking at. And so we just start laughing. We're going like, okay, what are we going to do? It's weird to have somebody in two positions like that, or somebody in different positions like that. But generally, it's not a good idea. You know, it really isn't. If you've got time pressures like everybody else is saying, we'll work around it. But, and sometimes we'll do a desk review, which is where we know this is going to be a good book. It's already in good place. Sometimes people will send us a manuscript and we'll go into a contract, but we'll know that they have to revise it. And then we say it's subject to submission, to approval of the final manuscript. So if they've already got a manuscript, they've done a lot of the work, we might do that. If that makes sense.
Feel like Oprah. Other questions? Why don't we tackle one of the reviewer questions? Who's got a reviewer question here?
Yeah, can you, okay. How do you all select your reviewers?
We have, at Practices and Possibilities, we have sort of a list of reviewers, and they sometimes provide, sometimes don't provide a list of interests or expertise, but that is on our submissions portal. If you'd like to be a reviewer, reach out, get added to our list, let us know what you're interested in. And that's how we generally choose. We get a submission, we see sort of the themes or the major ideas, and then we try to match that with somebody who has expertise in that area. Sometimes submitters will have specific people they would like to do a review. That's a possibility as well. So if you have people in mind who you would like us to send it to, give us that information as well. Potentially we could add them to our list, or they might already be on our list. So that's definitely the way I select reviewers for our proposals.
Because we're an international exchanges series that focuses on exchanges across borders, we have a review board that has an expertise in US and multiple countries, some represented on our editorial, our co-editors. We have a Latin American series that specifically looks at Spanish, Portuguese, and English. So we have people who have multilingual backgrounds, who have abilities in different traditions of research and writing studies internationally. And so it's really important for us to have that at hand, have those people at hand on our review board. We're always expanding it. We just sent out a questionnaire to all our researchers, checking on, their availability for the coming year, and some go on sabbaticals. We don't want to bother them. And also they're upgrading their interests. What are your research interests now? Because when they first we all change, right? So we want to keep that updated, and we just did that. If for some reason, which we just ran into, we don't have someone on our immediate board, then I go to the WAC Clearinghouse board, which has even more people on it with more expertise across borders. And we'll look at that. We would definitely go outside if we didn't find somebody on those two review boards, but we're really relying on sort of the commitment and expertise that reviewers have had to the WAC Clearinghouse, because they know the quality, they know what we want, and they kind of know how Mike rolls. I mean, how we work. So that's one of our concerns. We do have a challenge in that we have a collection being proposed that is being proposed with a chapter in an indigenous language, and we're not sure how to handle that, and we're in discussion with that now. So that'll take a special thinking in terms of how we think about reviewing that particular piece.
In Parlor Press's case, we don't have an editorial board per se. We have series editors, and the series editors and I will consult on a proposal or prospectus or whatever we've received. And then we kind of reach for the top, in the sense that we'll look for the reviewers who are the world's experts on that subject, have written about it and researched it. And so we want to get the best reviewers, and we'll go straight to them and ask. That it's a very involved process because a lot of them are really busy and they can't do it. And but we usually get great reviewers doing it that way. And one advantage we have is that I tend to be in a related or adjacent field, and the series editors are. And so when a really good scholar agrees to review it, they feel guilty if they do a half baked. Yeah, that was the word I was looking for. Half baked job. So they really go into it, and they don't do the kind of one-off, this is terrible and kind of thing, but they give great feedback for revision and all that stuff.
I'll add just a little bit to that, for perspectives. We've more increasingly have been getting proposals and manuscripts that have topics that are pushing the boundaries of how our field thinks, and the ways in which we talk about writing and teaching and those sorts of things. And they're topics that often have very strong opinionated camps in our disciplines. So we've been very, very conscious of who we ask to review those texts, and not in a way that's like, who's going to read this and be like, yes, but who's going to read this with a very careful and thoughtful eye. And maybe it's one of those reviewers is somebody that leans more toward that camp, and maybe one of those reviewers is somebody who leans a little less away from that camp, to balance it out. But it's become incredibly important as we get into these, even more recently, getting texts around disability studies, where sometimes the feedback that comes back is just what I would consider harmful. And we say, okay, go find another reviewer for this one, because that's not appropriate and it's going to cause harm. So we'll extract the bits or rephrase the bits that are useful, but we're going to continue to get the feedback that is going to help the author the most, regardless of whether that manuscript goes forward with us. But it's been a juggling act of doing that with also finding reliable reviewers. Reliable reviewers is a hard thing to find.
I was gonna hold the mic for you.
I'm was going to suggest that we go into that review process and what to do with feedback when you get feedback. And you brought up harmful review, and I think that's really experienced writers. What I've learned is, and I keep trying to be one myself, an experienced writer really knows what to do with feedback, is what I've noticed in working with writers over time. They take the feedback, they go, oh, well, I don't like that, but let me think about that. Or, oh, what a great idea. Why didn't I see that? And they also look at things and go, yeah, I thought about that, but I just don't agree with that one. So I'm not going to follow up on that. That's the difference to me than those who are just starting into publishing, and it hurts when you get something that seems hurtful. I think what Heather just outlined, and I'd love to hear your take on this too, because we run different kinds of series, is really important, because I imagine, and I know my co-editors do too, and our reviewers, that we're there to mentor these texts into being. And I think the way David started talking about, how excited he is about doing this, we all followed up. We're mentoring these into being, and we're happy to be there and do that. We don't intend harm, and we're careful, I think, in all our series not to do harm. But we also are still working on interrogating what we're doing. We're still caught in a lot of vocabularies that come to my talk tomorrow, that our publishing habitus really encourages. And so I'd like to hear what other people say. I mean, we also tried to balance, manuscript is out now. We have somebody from the US and somebody from a country close to the person who is authoring this, so that we get, because we're crossing borders, we want a wide audience, you know, to really take a look and give some good feedback from both sides. And we get it, you know, so, but we have to be careful about that too. Yeah.
I find that when I get a review back and I'm trying to prepare a review letter, I have to sort of, like you said, pick out the most helpful pieces, sort of balancing, okay, this reviewer's taste. There's like this matter of taste. You can't contend with taste sometimes. So, so there's like, oh, I just don't like this thing or this acronym or this concept or whatever. That doesn't feel very helpful
Yeah.
as I'm preparing a review letter. And so I'm trying to sort of sift through that review response and kind of say, okay, that's just a taste issue. And here's more of a constructive piece of a generative, so something that they can produce something after they read it rather than just like nix the whole idea because that's just whatever. But that's something I've been thinking about, is sort of balancing constructive criticism, constructive feedback from, this is a matter of personal taste.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's important for the author who receives reviews to be thoughtful about them. We ask authors to take a little bit of time and respond semi-formally to the reviews. If they've, for example, recommended accept but revise. Take a little while and then decide what you agree with or not. And if you have a plan for revision, send us that in a couple of weeks. The one thing that gets my goat is, and this is very rare, but I've had authors insult the reviewers immediately with vitriolic language. And that puts an end to the whole process right there immediately. Because, you know, you're gonna have to work with me to get that book published, and you've already made me mad, so we might as well end it. That's extremely rare, and you know, I don't know anybody in our field proper who would actually do that. It's usually an interloper or a troll or something. But they're out there. But you know, respect the work that the reviewers have done. And it's really hard to write a good review that recommends revisions and sees the quality in a work that might not be fully developed yet. And so respect that, and be collaborative. Yeah.
Yeah, the best piece of advice I got was when I was in grad school, and Maya Poe said to me, never write something about a fellow scholar that you wouldn't be willing to stand face to face and say in a conference like this. If you're not comfortable doing that, don't put it in writing. And that includes emails, that includes reviewer letters. Engage with everything in a very thoughtful and respectful manner, even if you disagree. And I think one of the things too about reviews is you have to remember, as an author, you don't have to accept all the suggestions. I mean, they all hint at this, but I think it bears saying outright, like there are going to be some suggestions. I can tell you some of the suggestions that I was told on some of my writing that I'm like, that's not what this book is about. Like, that's not at all what this is about. You missed it. But I didn't say that. I just said, well, I respect that idea, but that's not the take I wanted to, you know, go. So, so yeah, so you do have power in that regard.
Yeah, and as an editor, if I have a response like that, where you disagree with what the reviewer has said and you just say why, and it doesn't have to be a big, long argument. I say, okay, you know, that's makes sense. That's fine. No problem.
Yeah. And I think that's also, you have to remember that reviewers have bad days too, and reviewers misread things, and you know, you really have the authority to take your own text in hand. I want to point it out that I know Mike has review guidelines. He has guidelines for writers on the WAC clearinghouse. We have guidelines for reviewers in our portal. When they pull it up, they're all there. So, there are guidelines helping us even when we get reviewers' comments back that we're going to send to somebody else. So, to that author. So I think we're all pretty mindful of again, that sort of mentoring role.
A lot of mentoring that goes on. We had a bunch of new folks enter questions. This is just a very informal Q&A. Other thoughts and questions?
I have a question for the audience. Have any of you thought about reviewing for a publication and you're just interested or don't know where to begin? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I think especially for me, that's where I started. I was a manuscript reviewer for Feminist Teacher as a grad student, and then that sort of started the whole process. And I feel like I've upgraded, now I'm a series co-editor and it's really exciting. That's where you get started. And I would encourage people who are earlier in their career or in graduate school to take that on and to get started at that level, because you learn so much about the process. And it's inspiring. It's really inspiring to see other people's work. So are you interested in reviewing? Come to Practices and Possibilities or Perspectives. Yes.
And I feel that.
Feel free. Happy to revisit. I think we talked about this, but I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about the time commitment, because I am ideologically, excited about the idea of being a reviewer, and also it's one more thing to take on. So like, what does that entail?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'll offer from Perspectives. It depends on what it is that we're asking you to review. If we ask you to review a proposal, that's usually going to have sort of a prospectus, an argument for why this book is needed and how it fits into the field, et cetera, an introduction and a couple sample chapters. So think around 75 pages. And when we have something like that, we ask folks to try to get back to us within 2 months. Sometimes we have to push that a little bit longer. If it's a full-on manuscript, depending on the length, we usually aim for 3 to 4 months. Most of that is out of consideration for the authors in case it's like a clear no and they need to move on.
Yeah, that's a similar timeline for us. I mean, we have through our submissions portal, we have our requests would go out. We select sort of a deadline. I try to do it 4 weeks for a shorter proposal. But that's flexible. We're human beings. And with the sort of shortage of reviewers right now, seems to be very flexible in terms of time. And our reviewers let us know when they're available and when they're not available. So I think it's a really humane practice. But for a proposal, I would hope by 8 weeks we would have some kind of response from you. And we have 8 questions on our review guidelines. So, and it's very structured, and I find it really helpful. If the reviewer just sticks to that, I feel like you can get it done in a reasonable amount of time. But like Heather said, if it's a manuscript, you're looking at a book, but you're answering similar questions. And yeah, so that timeline is it's flexible, but I feel like manageable if you think about it, 1 to 2 months for a proposal, and then a little longer for a full manuscript.
It's similar. It depends on the length of proposal, blah, blah, blah. But I think the important thing for reviewers to think is what we do is, again, because we use the portal that Mike sets up, When I go to the list of reviewers to choose someone, I can see when they last reviewed for us. So we try not to assign a reviewer more than one of anything a year. And so far, because I have this board of people I can rely on and the larger clearinghouse board, it's worked out pretty well. It just works out well.
It can take a while. In terms of actual time, were you thinking about that too? Yeah, I had a feeling you might, yeah. It depends, on how much experience you have. I review for outside presses occasionally, but I say, I'm kind of running this press of my own I got to deal with. But I do, and it takes me at least a day, full day, maybe 2 days, to do a review for me. But I'm really fast at it in terms of I can make judgments really quickly, and I don't second guess because I can't afford to. But you want to write out a good response and give suggestions for revision and all that, and so 15 hours is probably 10 to 15 is about minimum, I think, for a full manuscript.
Right.
I think some of it depends on length. I had to do an internal review recently, but the book was 180,000 words, so it was much, which is like 60 over what the cap was supposed to be. Yeah, so it was, but that took me 3.5 full days, so around 6 hours each day of sitting, so around 20 hours to do that and then formulate thoughts and offer feedback. And yeah, don't do it in that short span of time. It's not fun. Other questions? Yeah, Maria.
So I'm making the assumption that for the editor, your interest is in the press, your interest is in the value to the field. But I would like to hear a little bit more about that. Like how you think through what would make something valuable to the field. And it is probably different for each of your series, but I think that'd be interesting to hear about.
I feel like I'm talking a lot. I'll let you all start.
I'm not going to start with that one. That's a hard one.
Oh, thanks.
It's really hard to predict what that value is going to be. And sometimes books that you didn't think were necessarily special in that regard, but good, but we're not going to have profound impact, end up having one, because they catch on, and usually it's the timing is right, and there are changes afoot, and they start to take hold, and it's usually the books that are creating a new or somewhat original conversation, especially with edited collections. If they're creating a whole new area of inquiry, those are the ones that catch on. Those collections catch on. But if they're, just a bunch of great essays about a topic, they don't. Individually authored books, that's really hard to say. The trade industry can't figure that out either. I'm pretty good at recognizing when it's a good book and high quality, and whether people like it or not, in terms of buying it and all that doesn't matter as much. I've got a book now that is a masterpiece. It's the magnum opus of a great scholar, and it's 798 pages long, and it's so complex I can't have anybody review it, or I'd have to pay him $10,000 to figure it out. It's like, I think it's like the Ulysses of Rhett Comp. And in some ways it doesn't matter if what I think about whether it's going to have an impact. I just have a feeling it will. So I don't know if that helps at all or not.
Kind of like where David ended, where it doesn't matter if, I mean, that's such a hard judgment to make, I think, for all of us. We would have to presume that we have the expertise and knowledge of, like everyone in the field, right? On the other hand, I think we want to be sure, and this is one of our questions for reviewers, does this add to a conversation in the field? Does it engage the conversations in the field? And I think that's more the important question. And again, for international exchanges, we have to be really sensitive to not assuming a judgment or judging or assuming out of a particular USA academic context as the rubric for determining whether something's valuable to the field of writing studies, because writing study does not revolve around the US. Well, some people think it does, but it doesn't revolve around the US. So for our series, it doesn't. And so it's really important for our series to have that as an additional consideration when we think about what kinds of conversations they're engaging. One other thing that we've moved away from, and I don't think we ever were there, but we ask that authors aren't just doing what we did in the 90s when it was really, really important, when 80s, when writing centers were getting started and WAC programs were getting really popular. And that is to tell us how we do this, we do that. Our program does this, and then I talk to faculty, and then I do this. At conferences, it's really important we engage in that work differently. But a book that just says, this is what our program does, is not our focus. There's different series where that's a focus and where that book should go, right? What we do say, though, is if you're going to have a book that says, we do this, we do that, you do more of what Julia did at the talk at lunch, and that is you describe it, but then, show its theoretical, how it picked up theory and moved it in different places and where it's going as a result that would engage people to think differently.
I am a selfish person. I am a junior faculty member early in my tenure track journey. So when I see a book that could benefit the faculty that I work with, I am like, yes, we need this. I need this. My school needs this. And so I get really excited about those kinds of projects that have immediate urgency application in my context. Or this is something I wish I would have had when I was in graduate school or earlier in my career that I think will benefit that audience as well. So I'm a very selfish reader and editor, I suppose, because I'm thinking constantly about the faculty that I work with and provide development for as well.
That's the purpose. That's the whole purpose of your series, is to put out the practices. Yeah. And that's what I mean about looking at the series and making sure that that's the right place for your particular book. Yeah.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that is to think about, I'm thinking about it from the author perspective. What is it that was so exciting for you to work on that project? That's where you need to harness your energy, because doing a book project, sometimes we think of it like a dissertation and it's not. It is much bigger, and it takes a lot more time and energy and mental cognitive load to work through the nuance of it. So it takes it's a totally different animal. I see this with edited collections often. Folks will say, oh, I have this great idea, and I've got 14 people who are going to write chapters about this idea, and they send it to us, and it's like, well, that's cool, but like, you're just kind of jamming on an idea, but not really contributing something new. And if we as editors think there's something there, we'll share what we think is useful and maybe offer some direction to authors. We have had this happen frequently, but there is a book that I won't name names, but they came to us and the idea was, it felt very flat, right? And we came back to them, we said, we like kind of the kernel of the idea, but what you're doing here is not working. Like it's just reproducing a lot of stuff that we can see 100 places already. And they spent time thinking about that. And then they came back to us with another proposal and some samples that took the kernel of their idea and twisted it on the end. And I'm fairly certain it's going to be nominated next year for the best, or the next round for best edited collection, because I think it's like offering something super novel to our field in terms of thinking about methodologies and thinking about the messiness of writing. So yes, I'll just stay tuned for that announcement. Other questions?
So, Joan, you're gonna recognize this, but I'm a bit curious what the other series, how you feel, react, process late withdrawals.
So somebody under contract who then decides to pull out. With perspectives, I will say that it's disappointing if it's something that we had really excited about. It kind of depends on why they're withdrawing, and that, if they're like, I actually want to publish with Routledge, and I'm like, what? But if it's something like, I really don't have the time and energy to get this to completion, we respect that.
I haven't dealt with that issue myself in my experience at Practices and Possibilities. So I think Mike Palmquist could probably speak more to that. I don't know, since you're my, you're my co-editor on the series, but I have not dealt with that. I've had people kind of reach out to me who say, I have this idea, but it's never reached any kind of contract or even proposal stage, where they just sort of maybe lose confidence or something. But yeah, I haven't dealt with withdrawals.
I haven't really either. I've dealt with people who've taken many years to complete a book. The magnum opus, Ulysses of Retcomp, 19 years. The contract was so old that it had these kind of, well, no, it was in this weird kind of green font, and you could tell it was like a dot matrix printer, I think, or something. And I'm a patient person, and I knew if the author's going to do it, they're going to do it. But I haven't really had anybody get pretty far into it and then disappear, or but they have their reasons, so I would respect that.
So before people started thinking that the Clearinghouse was a real publisher, we ran into this problem more than once, where people were saying, yeah, thank you for doing all the reviews and development. It's really helped a lot, but I can publish with a real publisher now. So that happened a few times early on, and it was pretty disappointing, especially because they were being stupid about it. Because in the long run, I mean, honestly, in the long run, those books go out, and a print only book will publish on average now in the industry average 385 copies of a book. About 25 libraries, if they're lucky, will pick it up. And if it's solely print, it doesn't get wide circulation. Whereas our books, going back to our original books, going back to 2003, they're still being downloaded at a pretty steady rate. So I think that was a bad decision in retrospect, but at the time they were thinking about getting tenure or promotion, and thinking that slightly more prestigious press would give them a better chance of getting tenure, right? So I understand that. I just think they limited their impact on the field by doing that. So, yeah, what do you think?
Well, and one of the books in the Perspectives on Writing series, probably multiple, but it was quite a moment when Aseo Inoue's anti-racist writing assessment, Ecologies, won the Best Book Award for 4 Cs. Oh, they don't list it as both. I think I've emailed them about that too.
You heard it live, right?
Yeah, so those moments, yeah. Parlor Press had a poetry book longlisted for the National Book Award 2 years ago. It was in the New Yorker, right next to books by Penguin and Farrar, Straus and Giroux and all of that. And, we will have our moments.
Magnus is my co-editor and asked that question, so I don't think I have to comment. If there aren't questions here, what I was going to say is you started this conversation, Heather, about in your last response about edited collections hanging together. And I remember that in the Perspectives series, Sue McLeod always wanted the whole collection to read seamlessly and hang together. And when I first saw that, I thought, oh, Sue, that's so, it's,
Sue and I did that.
oh, gosh, it was so annoying as a potential author going, you mean I have to really think about this collection rather than
I don't want
just
to
do
write
what
if
you
I have to think.
And of course, the books that were put out were just brilliant. And I think you taught us a lot about what a collection should look like. But I wondered if both of you and you had more to say about how do you propose a collection how should it hang together? What does that mean?
So I will preface this by saying that doing an edited collection in some ways is more work than doing a monograph. Especially if you have a large number of authors, because you're doing a lot of what I refer to as cat wrangling. It's just you're constantly trying to get everybody to do the things that you want them to do. And I think the hard part is figuring out what you as editor, co-editors want the story arc of the collection to be. It's still got to have a story. It's still got to have a message and be cohesive. And there are strategies for doing that that are rhetorical. You have authors work together across chapters and reference each other. You have maybe some framing introductions. You can do a lot of different creative things to build that cohesion. But yes, I feel very strongly that with an edited collection, you really have to think about what message you as the leads want to communicate to the world and how are those authors helping to get that message out there.
Yeah, I would just, what story is it telling? I think that's exactly the metaphor, I was going to use. I think I haven't been in this long enough to really recognize that seamlessness yet. But story I get, what are we doing here and what's the need? So yeah, I would just second what you just said.
Yeah, and seamless might not have been the best, but I like the idea of what's the story. I think that's a better way to frame it.
Add to that, I'll just project, so you don't have to move them.
Hold it like this.
That's not always as apparent as you think it is, right? As editors, you might think the story is one thing at the start, and you might even have the whole thing organized and like, yes, this is done, we can move it on. And then it comes back and reviewers are like, no, this doesn't work. That chapter needs to go here. This needs to be here. I don't understand how these things connect. And you get fussy and you spend some time talking about it and thinking about it. And then you realize, oh, yes, they're right. Let's do a whole new storyboard. We do storyboards, right? Get your stickies out and your dry erase board. And then you end up coming together with something that's stronger.
How do you guys deal with reviews where they come back? Strongly recommend. Yeah, how do you work with authors on that? So.
Too late.
You want to start with that?
That does come up a lot. We all the editors, the series editors will reread things and think about length, whether it's salvageable or not, whether we have the time to help the author develop it. Um, um, Sometimes we will communicate this to the book editor or editors and let them decide. Sometimes they've been wanting to get that kind of feedback as an excuse to, because they knew it didn't fit for whatever reason.
Good point. To build on that, every collection doesn't have every chapter that is of equal strength in it. And I think that's another piece of reality here. Because we're working across languages and multilinguals who are perhaps translating into English concepts that are not easily translatable, it becomes really difficult for us. Come tomorrow and I'll talk about this. Anyway, it becomes difficult for us to make those decisions about whether an external reviewer has seen through either the accent on the tradition or the language or the translation, and judge this appropriately. They usually do. If there's general agreement, we send it back to the editor, and they're going to have to go back to that author. I think it's, Magnus, maybe only once that I'm thinking of that somebody was really told, but I think it was in a collection because our contracts are contingent upon a final review. And we encourage editors of collections to tell their folks that if the final reviewers say that it has to be shortened or some chapters have to come out, they might not be included. And I think that's the only way we can do it. If it gets reviewer feedback like that, and as lead editors, we feel that way, the editors of the collection are going to have to do the chop.
Absolutely. Just seconding, thirding that.
But that's interesting to hear that you're.
Yeah, allowing the editor to have that conversation. And sometimes it's an email exchange between us as an editorial team with that collection editor or editors. But the ownership is on them to make that decision.
Yeah, it absolutely, we defer to them. We say, this is what reviewers had to say, whether or not we agree with it. In some instances there's like a really problematic chapter and we know it's a problem and we identified it as a problem. And the editors of the collection have said, yeah, we know it's a problem, but the author's not listening to us. And they're just giving us the same thing or they're pushing back. And in those instances, we tend to get on Zoom so that it's not written down. And I say, what do you need from me to help you get them to do the thing that you want? Sometimes it's the contingency is this needs to be revised. You cannot have 47 footnotes in your chapter that's 12 pages long. So it's like, it's that kind of thing is like, or the language is defamatory or problem, that sort of thing. It's like, look, this is not the book editor saying this is the publication saying we will not publish this unless you make these changes. You can either make the changes or you can be cut from the collection. And sometimes co-editors need that kind of support. So we try to do that. I think we have time for like one more question. Yeah, please. No,
So you were just talking about sort of translating across maybe cultural differences in field and also obviously language, but it made me think of AI, and I'm just curious, maybe it's naive of me to think that you wouldn't run into AI idea generation at this level, but I'm wondering if you ever have maybe a proposal that went through an online translator and from one language to another, and it has that kind of like robotic style to it, or like, have you ever like dealt with that, and how do you address that problem, I guess?
great question, John.
That's a great question. Not to my knowledge. I mean, I haven't seen it to my knowledge, and I think we have astute enough reviewers and multilinguals looking at this to be able to recognize something I might not. Guilulum, oh, what is his last name? I can give you a reference to a YouTube on publishing globally, and he's the last presenter in there, but he speaks to using AI as a translation. And I've used Google Translate a lot to communicate with authors. And of course, you have to use a couple different translators to make sure you're not calling them names or something. But it's worked for me when I have to do that. But in terms of publishing, what he shows is that AI's capabilities at this point aren't high enough, in particular. And I think, Mike, you might want to speak to this because you did last night, in particular, in terms of cultural nuances. And again, there are, I'm just going to say French, there's concepts in every language that are literally not translatable. And that becomes a decision that is so fine grained, especially in academia, that we're not there yet. And I'm hoping we're not until I'm dead.
This is not exactly related to your question, but it's about edited collections and AI. I have a great author who's working on an edited collection called AI in the Humanities. And he's one of the world's experts now. But it's been about 2.5 to 3 years in the making. So we had a meeting last week and I said, you know, this is the pre-chat GPT era and it's just not going to work anymore because things have changed so dramatically. And he knew it. That's why he wanted to have the meeting. And so we had to figure out how can we salvage this because they're good essays, but things have changed. And I said, well, we could do a before and after. You could ask the contributors to say, okay, this was me in the you know, what's the area in
Pre-AI.
Pre-AI? I was thinking 2001 when the
Oh, the space ones?
yeah. There was that era, and then there was the you know, before the bone was tossed into the air. Yeah. And have the authors
You're dating yourself, I'm just saying.
It was some era. Yeah, so we're gonna figure out how to salvage it, but you know.
That's a great idea. But still, you know, the problem with AI and writing about it in a collection is it's probably going to be out of date even in a year from now, right? I mean, it's problematic.
Yeah, I said, well, if you get it to me, the new stuff, we'll put it out in 3 months. That's as fast as we can do it. But, you know.
It just harkens back to back in like 2012 when I was in grad school, the idea of planned obsolescence. That was a book that we read. I mean, it's what we do.
Yeah.
It's what we do. We know that this is going to be outdated really soon, and we're a year behind AI right now, I feel like, or more. So I don't know. We have materials up here if anybody would like to pick up these postcards with some information about our series. And reach out to us if you would like to be reviewers. Don't be afraid. That's what people
Or
who
if you want to propose a book.
or propose a publication. Yes.
But reviewing, yes.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you all so
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you.